Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Sorcerous Intent, a new podcast from the Visible College where we explore different areas of esoteric and magical practice. I'm very excited for our first guest host to be Mr. Christopher Sanders, who is an incredible occultist. I will let him introduce himself now.
Hello from sunny Los Angeles. My name is Christopher Sanders, professionally known as CR Sanders. I am a TV film producer here in LA, and in typical reality TV fashion, I'm recording today on a handheld with amateur lighting. And I have been involved in the magical communities of Los Angeles and beyond. Since I moved here in 1999, I've been very fortunate to have some very renowned teachers, friends, associates, enemies, and everything else that entails the journey of that, many of whom I've met internationally, including our good host today. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of my insights and stories on today's topic.
Brilliant, thank you. And we also have as our first questioner or querent, my good friend Edward. Edward, say a few words.
Hi, my name is Edward Riles. I'm a recently graduated student of one of the Visible College's courses and a magical and all-round spiritual seeker, and have been for past 5 or so years. And I'm very excited to be here and to hear what Chris has to share on today's topic.
Brilliant. So onto that, for our first episode of Sorcerous Intent, we wanted to bring together two people to talk about saints and pilgrims. The reason that I bring this up is that Chris has been a good friend of mine for a good 7 or 8 years now, and I had the very exciting opportunity through Chris to travel to France last year to see the festival of Sarah-la-Kali in Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer. Now, it was a complete shock to me just how amazing this pilgrimage was, and to learn all about the history of the saints. So I'll introduce some questions. Well, Edward will introduce questions. The idea is for people who are new to a particular strain of practice to be able to ask these questions that you might feel unable to ask inside a big lecture theatre at a conference or even a smaller setting, but to make the world of the esoteric and occult more accessible to those new to the path. So talking about saints and pilgrims, Edward, please ask your first question.
Yeah, I think I'll start off with just definitions. For the uninitiated, what is the kind of standard definition of a saint, and does that change in and out of the occult community?
Good question. I would think that this, if we're going to give a definition, it's by context. My simplest answer is that the saints represent the mighty dead, who are venerated by various cultures. Um, they're often seen as more accessible than, say, gods, poetic spirits, things of that nature. But you can see a rich history of the saints everywhere you go, particularly in Europe, in England, and beyond. You can see this in other cultures too. You can see Asian cultures, the Chinese culture, and the immortals. The immortals that are spoken of many times, the Taoist immortals. Like these could be considered saints in a different context, like human beings who achieved wondrous powers through their devotion and connection to the divine, dare say magical practices, and now hold a position where they are still intercessors with the humans, with the cultures and the people who call upon them. One reason I like to go to Europe, go to the UK so much is they are so embedded in the culture and the people and the history. Every corner you turn, sometimes if you look closely, you see them, and sometimes there's gigantic statues of them. You don't have to look closely at all. It's you cannot avoid them. And America has that too. Places like New Orleans, other spots. California itself, half the cities are named after the saints from the Spanish, conquistadors. Um, where I live here in Los Angeles. I mean, it's literally named after the Queen of the Angels, who could be considered a saint. But you travel up and down the coast, San Diego, Santa Barbara. These are all saints that were brought over from Europe, and they are accessible. Ability in that it doesn't seem to require a lot of the techniques and formats and structure, like say the grimoire spirits adhere to, um, or the sort of rigorous initiation into various mysteries to do Enochian or things of that nature. Um, I feel that saints grew in popularity so much because of the accessibility, because anyone working at the baker's shop or a lumberjack or whoever can access them, and you often have these local saints, and I've had a lot of really interesting experiences with local saints that I didn't even know existed before I went to certain towns. I went to a place in Ireland and had a dream of this one saint that I didn't even know about, and then I went to the local church and there he was. It is straight on my dream. um, so that's my kind of long winding and pilgrimages associated with the saints and their holy places. And it's kind of a 1-2 punch, if you're wanting to involve yourself in them. I think pilgrimages and visiting the areas and places that they're associated with is one of the richest and most rewarding things to do if you do want to engage these mighty dead.
Would you say, on the accessibility point, would you say that the pilgrimage is kind of the saint equivalent of?
I would say that it is a type of right, certainly. It is, well, what do you mean when you say a right then? Because the great thing about the saints is, like prayer alone, they all have a prayers associated with them. So once again, especially if they're active in your area, you can just light a candle, put out some water, and do the prayers, do a devotional thing, and you experience. You may then start engaging the saint. Uh, Certainly, if you're going for miracles, which is sort of their domain, pilgrimages do up the ante in that way. It's I think with anything with the spirit world, oftentimes um, there is a sense of being in right relationship, of having a genuine interaction with them, and a genuine appeal to them, and them being former humans, them being mighty dead. There is this still very human quality to them. Lots of spirits come off very alien, have their own sort of morality, but with the mighty dead, with these ancestors, these wondrous ancestors, we're talking with you know elevated humans here. We're talking with people who had our own feelings, that bathed and had to eat food and aged, had all our own experiences. So certainly, it's like we can sit here and talk across a Zoom call and make friends on the internet all day, but when I come across the ocean and see you in Oxford, like I am in a couple of weeks, you're like, wow, this guy really means what he's doing here. He's genuinely trying to connect on a much deeper level, and I think it's kind of the same thing. Going to Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer certainly gave me revelations and deepened my relationship with that saint and other saints in the region. I went to Munich shortly after that, based upon a promise I had made to Cosimo and Damiano, who are twin saints and they are healers. So that was part of my journey. I don't want to get too much into it here, but it was a journey of healing in many ways. And it was a fulfillment of a promise I had made years ago.
Mm.
And I could definitely say that my connections to those saints were extremely deepened from that journey, from those pilgrimages.
Chris, I wanted to pick up when you're talking about strengthening your connection to a spirit by making a pilgrimage. So I certainly noticed last year when you invited me to France right at the end of this 49-day Babylon working I started in April. And you just said, "Oh, hey, I'm going to Europe, and wanted to come and see us and the guys in Bristol, but I'm going to France first, and do you know anyone that wants to come to the festival of Sarah Lakali, who I had no idea was, in effect, a priestess of Ishtar at the end of this 7-week Babylon working. And by going and taking that journey and really following through with the thread that I'd, started pulling on, I've been a Thelemite for a long time, but it led to all sorts of, huge things coming back up for me, and in fact, the Visible College reappearing as a manifest entity, and also this sweet chest tat that I've now got. So from Rosa Laguna, who you should check out in Seville. So yeah, I think there's something to that about the act of going to a place and encountering the spirit where it's honored. Is that something you'd want to pull a little bit further?
I mean, oh, absolutely, and that is the definition of a pilgrimage. By the time this episode comes out, I'm going to be in Glastonbury again, and it's like every time I go to Glastonbury, it is a pilgrimage. It is a pilgrimage destination. Just the act of going there. It's an incredible place. I was actually sitting with my good friend William Kiesel, who's the founder and who runs Ouroboros Press, and we were speaking yesterday of he's been to both Glastonbury and New Orleans, and he said, it's they're very similar in a way, and that they're so entrenched in myth and in the saints on various levels that you go there and it's a paradigm shift. Like you just instantly feel, okay, this place is alive with magic, which may be very different, but nonetheless, you feel that it's one of those places in the world where you go and the saints are, I mean, they're alive there. You feel the presence. It's similar to Prague too. And I had some very interesting experiences with the saints in Prague. I had some very interesting
Yeah.
Munich, but I was being very specific. Let me tell you longer, friend, but make a petition to Cosmo, the twins, the Hughes, years ago, and it was to in a creative film project that didn't much kind of involve the flavor of all what we're talking about. He went on, and part of it was like, we will honor your relics at the churches where they're held, and supposedly their skulls are held in the Church of Saint Michael in Munich, and
My
uh,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, and like typical Hollywood things, he kind of disappeared once he got the money for it, and went on to do it, and went to Europe and filmed stuff there, and he did not go. He did not visit. He did not uphold his part of the bargain, and lots of horrible things happened to him. But I sort of had this kind of stroke of bad luck too, and I've remembered this for a long time. So part of me being in Europe, I was like, you know what? I'm going to fulfill this part of my bargain. Like it was fulfilled. I didn't necessarily benefit from it or whatnot, but I'd still made this promise. So while I was
Yeah.
in Prague, which was after I left Paris, after Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer, I took a train to Munich and I arrived. And the interesting thing was, I didn't realize this. I didn't, and this often happens too. This is a great example. You don't necessarily plan certain things, but time lines up with you to make things amazing. It's like the universe hears you, the saints hear you. I had this incredible experience with Cosmo and Damiano in Prague,
Mm-hmm.
where they appeared on my phone, and it turns out there's statues right there, right by where I was staying, that I wasn't aware of until I finished a novena to them.
Mm-hmm.
And Edward, are you familiar with novenas?
I'm not, no.
So real quick sidebar, that is one of the traditional ways to appeal and establish a relationship or further relationship with a saint is a novena. It's 9 days. It's 9 days of devotion. It's 9 days of prayer to them. So And I find that kind of interesting that nine's connected to the moon, things of that nature. But yeah, for 9 days, light a candle, put out some water, maybe put out some wine. Uh, Usually it's a build up to their feast day. Every saint has a feast day. So I did this in Prague. I was there. I timed it that I'd be there for 10 days. And on their feast day, I have pictures of all this. I put out wine, I put out some treats, all this sort of thing. I was doing something very specific for healing for a loved one of mine. And it was the one day it rained. I was leaving Prague the very next day. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this kind of corny paranormal museum that's down by Old Town, very close to where I'm staying. So I could just take an umbrella, go there real quick. And I pull up my GPS that I looked at every day for 9 days straight. And I type in, where is this place exactly? It's not very far. I can walk there in 5 minutes. Cosimo and Damiano's names appear on my Google Maps. I'm like, what is this voice from beyond? Well, I mean, it turns out that their statues are the first two ones on the bridge there that goes across the river. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of saints, Saint Christopher, all sorts.
Mhm.
I'd walk past them every freaking day. They were literally up the stairs from me. They were one of the closest saints to me.
And that's when it appeared.
But that's when they appeared, and
Yeah.
I knew, and so basically the wine I had offered is now at their feet. Like I went there, and like the offerings I had given were then that night transported them to their very statues, and it was like, and they're kind of, I wouldn't say they're trickster saints, but they have this kind of classic sense of humor. And it was like this revelation that occurred. Like they literally revealed themselves in the
And
rain.
it's very much like the Woden kind of like, oh, it's that guy that's been shambling along in the cloak and the hat all the
Yeah.
time. He's always been there, and now you know.
Yeah. And for some reason, I hadn't looked at specifically at them. It was just you walk by and there's loads of saints. Lots of them are hanging out with Jesus. And this is just one where there's like two guys standing beside him. Yeah. So then I go to Munich. There's a lot more to the story, but I go to Munich. I get there and I stay in Regensburg for 2 days. I wake up in Regensburg, about to head to Munich. Everything's closed. I'm like, why is everything closed? It turns out it's this national holiday, and it's the feast, because we're talking about feast days here. They have a feast day for the Holy Communion. And it's like the one feast day. I think this is celebrated in England and other parts of Europe. But it's the feast day that's devoted to the communion, not a specific saint. So I make it to Munich, and I basically, like, I make a beeline for St. Michael's Church.
Mhm.
I get there, and this is like a Thursday. It's not a day normally mass is held, but this is the feast day of the mass. I'm not really thinking about too much. I go into the church and it's full of people. This is a Thursday afternoon. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wandering around, and I'm like, where are their relics? Where are their relics? And I kind of go around the whole church, and if I'd started, basically the second I land there, and I'm looking at the relics.
Yeah.
Like I'm fulfilling it, and I say, okay, I'm here, I'm fulfilling, and I speak it. And that's one thing I say, to just speak to them as people, as in prayer. And I tell them, I am here fulfilling it. I appreciate what you've done for me. I'm sorry it's taken so long. I say all this, and
Mhm.
upon that fulfillment, the organs start playing. Everyone stands up. Like, I'm talking about this very second. Like, I'm about to like walk out. I'm like, all right, and now we're done. And all the clergy like march out of the sides of like where they're in. They're swinging incense around. They've got candles, all the stuff, and like mass has begun. That is why all those people were there.
Yeah.
Because it was the most holy of all the masses, because it is the day that is devoted to the feast of the Holy Mass. And so then I'm like, well, I'm gonna stay.
Yeah. Rude not to,
And I
right?
yeah, and I sat down right there, like with like like if that bookshelf is like their relics, and I took the Mass. And when I took the wafer, I kind of palmed it and went around the corner, and I took it in front of the relics. And I'm like, I hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so that is my sort of impromptu pilgrimage story. It kind of happened organically in my travels, but I will always remember that. I don't know how much more of a confirmation I can have of like, we have guided you, we have helped you, we've heard your prayers, and you know, that is one thing they're really good at, is getting you in the right place at the right time.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I want to give that example of what can occur on a pilgrimage, because to me that was just blatant. There's no question that karmic debt promise fulfillment had just shifted and occurred and been fulfilled and was well received, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so funny you mention like being in the church at the right time, because very, very parallel to that, you know, I went to France with you on my Babylon pilgrimage, and on the way back, Hannah and I, my partner and I, stayed in Paris, and the next day we went to Sainte-Chapelle, which is, you know, like the place with the relics, or where the relics used to be. It was everything from, like, you know, somebody's thigh bone to part of the Holy Cross and the crown of thorns, which has all been moved out. But we went up to see, and it was kind of like my last magical act in France as part of that pilgrimage. And we went through, not on like a guided tour, but they have, you know, tour booklets and stuff. And I went up mainly to see the reliquary, like the place, because, you know, it's like, it was like, you know, finding a barbecue pit where, you know, everything's been taken off it, but the coals are still smoking, right? You can feel the zing. And just as we're up there, like thinking, oh, we're just doing this as kind of like a tourist thing, because, you know, like, you're not going to find a lot of Babylon stuff in a Catholic church, until we see one of the videos about the restoration they have lining the walls, and it says, and the Apocalypse Rose of St. John has been lovingly restored, and we've just finished this corner, and that's the corner with Revelation in, because there are selected books from the Bible all around Sainte-Chapelle in stained glass window, and the big rose is the Apocalypse of St. John. And in each corner, in one corner there's Babylon, in the other corner there's the beast. I'm like, oh, okay, this is our final stop for the tour. Now the pilgrimage is complete. So yeah, exactly as you say. It's just that confirmation. But if the video hadn't like flicked to it and be like, hold on, I know that figure, like, we never would have clocked that that's where we were.
Yeah. And you know, that whole experience, the more I think about it, it was very like Revelation of Saint. I mean, like, we're there and there's a giant crowd of people bringing out, you know, the Santa Sara, who's been draped over 7 days in 7 different cloaks, and there's like men on horses with spears and lances, you know, and clergy marching before them, and like they're marching into the water. It's like a scene out of the Last Unicorn or something. These horses in the water and all. It was
and
you know,
they're all carrying it on their shoulders and singing.
Yeah,
and
it was
like,
fantastic.
It was like the Pope Mobile. Remember that? Like, oh yeah.
Yeah, but like, you know, medieval Pope. It was incredible.
Yeah.
So Edward, like, getting back to your inquiries and such, what sounds appealing to you, like, when it comes to the saints, and like, what aspects of your life are you seeking to improve, enhance, delve deeper on? Because the thing is, what's cool too is there is a saint for everything, like for everything.
Yeah.
I was going to ask that, because I know like Saint Expedite, Saint Jude, Saint Christopher, and like, you know, angel saints, but like in terms of actual honored dead saints, I don't know so much. Edward, what's the area?
Oh, I came prepared to ask questions, not get asked questions. So now I'm drawing a blank. I guess the area at the moment would be something around transition and growth. I'm in a career that I don't find particularly fulfilling anymore. I want to transition to a different career, but obviously in a fruitful and healthy way, rather than a sort of chaotic shipwreck kind of vibe. So yeah, which saint would I go to shift gears, change paths, transition?
Um, well, you know what I would do is I would kind of approach it on two levels. Like one is the transition and one is the destination, right?
Mm,
So like transitioning, traveling, going from one place to another is is the first part of the process. But ultimately, you don't want to be traveling anymore. You don't want to be en
yeah,
route to where you're going. You want to be there and you want to be
yeah,
established.
yeah,
So from what I know about you, you want to work in film,
yeah,
and I'm assuming that's kind of where you're that's
yeah,
the eye on the prize, right?
yeah.
Okay, so what I would do then is, first of all, Saint Christopher. Saint
Hmm.
Christopher is his whole story is that he was one of the legends is that he was a giant. Another is that he's basically Anubis. He was a dog. Like all the old pictures of Saint Christopher, including statues in the Vatican, he has a dog head on a human body. Um,
Right.
so lots of folks say that that is a trickle down of Anubis, Hermanubis, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He's very much a Mercury character, but he's the patron saint of travelers, and he's the one that would stand in the river for people trying to get across the river. So if you're looking at your goal, you're looking at your journey as through the metaphor of I need to cross this river. I need to get to that other side of the river where things are better for me, where I could have something different. I don't want to live life on that side of the river anymore. I want to live life on that side of the river.
Mm,
Saint Christopher, hands down. Um, but where you want to be on the other side of the river is working in film and TV.
yeah.
So actually, one of the first saints that I lit a candle for, because all these saints have novena candles as well, is Saint Clare. And Saint Clare is often depicted looking into this sort of lantern thing. But her story is that she was able to see visions and prophetic visions on the wall.
Oh,
And because of that, she is the patron saint of media, of television, of things like that. Um, literally moving images on a flat surface.
yeah.
Uh, and my journey, actually, I wanted to just kind of bring a few things. Like my journey is that I'd always been interested in the saints and had sort of a bit of a relationship with them. But when I was getting out of like primarily a ceremonial magical focus, well over 12 years ago, I had a big, it wasn't so much a revelation. It was like, what have I been doing? Um, I live in a city where millions of people are lighting candles to Guadalupe,
Mm,
to the saint of the Americas, you know, and like this saint, this face, this incarnation, this part of the Holy Mother, of Mary, is part of the foundation of the city. Like that, this is the queen saint of where I live in the region I live in. And in a lot of ways, I looked at it that way. Just like I look at different courts of spirits, is you often have this. It's well, sometimes it's a hierarchy, but sometimes it's just you have the leaders, you have the queens, you have the kings, you have the nobility of them, and then you have the other types. But like, it's always good, like when the boss knows who you are and the
mm,
person in charge, you have their favor. And as someone that I'm almost view myself as like wandering bard, wandering into different kingdoms and hoping to have the graces of the courts that I am welcome into. It very much felt a part of that process was like I'm going to start honoring um, Guadalupe, Mary. Um, Santa Monica is one of the cities that makes up Los Angeles, and that's like, she's one of them. There's
mm,
various versions of them, but like honoring, like finally being like, okay, I'm going to pay homage to the queen, La Reina of
mm,
this region,
mm,
uh was very effective. But that was like the doorway. And then Santa Clara, Saint Clair,
mm,
who was basically the counter, who was like the female counter to Saint Francis too. They were both alive at the same time.
mm,
And you had the Poor Clares and you had the Franciscan orders that could have came out of that.
mm.
But both of them had miraculous abilities, and that's my roundabout answer of if you are working to work in TV film, she is a good one. She is the patron saint of that. Another one too. So we have Saint Christopher to get you there. We have um, Saint Clair, who is the patron saint of media, moving media, images on the screen. Another one that I've got to give a shout out to, like it's and because this is actually part of the deals with Saint Expedite, is he likes public praise, and Saint Expedite gets things done. Like that is what Saint Expedite does. That is his big thing. That's what he's really good at. Hands down, one of the most accessible saints. And I have a recent story of I had spent months trying to solve this one issue with my household, trying to find a new subletter, trying to find a good person to live and kind of help restore stability. And part of me doesn't like to overuse these things. Part of me doesn't like to, and I see this a lot of people just kind of go to like a magical petitions anytime, for the most
Yeah,
mundane things all the
you
time.
do get it. Yeah, yeah. Like it's like don't pray to somebody to like pick your shopping up. Just walk down the street and go and do it.
Yeah, precisely. And so I don't want to I don't want to overextend my welcome, with these. So I don't want to, but this is, and I literally hadn't in years petitioned Saint Expedite. I do honor their feasts and things like that, but so yeah, I kind of knew that like this was going to be kind of the final thing, but that's kind of the specialty of the saint. So I do have a shrine to Saint Expedite. I do have it outside because he's a very kind of hot spirit. So I did start kind of like warming it up again, though, like just putting out some water, lighting a candle, lighting some incense, making my presence known again. And that's something that you can do. That's kind of the whole point of the novenas. But finally, when it came down to it, I didn't have the right person. And this was about a week or so ago. And so it was like the final days of August. And I finally fired it up, on a Sunday. And I was like, all right, you've got 4 days, like 4 days, like 9/3. It was 93, the 3rd
Yeah.
of September. And you got to be really clear and you spell it out. And because this is one of those saints that, if you don't honor your agreements, is known to like, take it back times three, and so the agreements are always like, you're going to get, we're going to give you the spicy rum. He likes pound cake, coins. I give flowers, incense. But public praise is part of that. And part of there was one time when I really needed something. I had a picture made of St. Expedite, which it hangs in my staircase door now. But yeah, on the 3rd, that was part of my thing. I wrote it all out, put it on the shrine. And it's like, I need a deposit and I need the rent by this day. And like, that was the day.
Yeah.
That was the day. And like, I'm talking to the new person that they came over, handed me the checks, and I like took them and I put them on the thing and said, all right. And I immediately, you got to do it immediately though. Like, boom, like immediately go and put out that pound cake, light up that stuff. And I needed to be somewhere that day too. And I did all this before I left, and I was almost late for the thing, but like it's not one of those things where you go like, all right, well, I'm gonna do it later today. That's not how the saint
You can't
works.
just
Like, it's like
clock out till
you
the
do
next
it
time. Yeah.
like
You
bam.
need
And
to be expeditious with your thanks to St. Expedite.
yeah, you can't just, because it's like you got to match the energy there. You really do. And part of it too is like they have the little uh prayer cards, right? Of which that's where you find the prayers. But part of what I do is I go out and I stuck it on a mural that's right around the corner from me. It's a very famous artist, very famous mural. It's like 2 stories high, and it's a guy on a motorcycle with like an angel woman on the back. And loads of people go and take pictures there. It's almost like a tourist attraction and local attraction. And I go and I stuck that image of the saint right there. And like it's part of a conversation. It's a conversational thing you do. And it's like, hey, so now everyone's going to come and take a picture of you
Right.
in the background. Here
Yeah.
you are at this famous crossroads. Like this is my offering of public praise of continuing your name and image, even if it's kind of in the background there. Everyone's going to see that, and that is going to, Well, they say, like, you only truly die when you're forgotten. No one speaks your name anymore. And I think that's
Yeah.
part of the magical application of this, is that the saints appreciate being revered and their memory kept alive. And it's that exchange of memory and communication that allows for these miracles in so many ways.
Cool.
I think so too. I mean, I wanted to pick up on the specificity there, because I know that you have, lots of experience in different types of ceremonial magic. Do you feel that the sort of the skills in conjuration in your in grimoire practice of asking very specifically worded questions or making very specifically worded pacts transfers from say treating with angels to treating with saints?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know of any kind of, I mean, I think the saints are much more generous,
Mhm.
and them being human, essentially.
Mm.
They will often, like, just help you
Mhm.
because that is part of their generous nature. Um, and that is what something they kind of represent, is sort of the bounty of the divine, the generosity of the divine, the answering of prayers, something that's accessible to anyone,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but there's a bunch of weird saints, and there's a bunch of saints that, just like there's angels that just murder people all the time,
Yeah.
just
We've all
destroy
seen the
whole
prophecy, right?
cities.
Yeah.
These messengers of the ever loving God. It's there are saints like this, like Cosmo and Damiano,
Mm.
Mm.
like Saint Expedite, who are more of these kind of quick-footed, what they're called, kind of hot saints, and
Yeah.
and the saints have been, when you had uh, like traditional African religions taking root in the Americas. Oftentimes, the saints, and you see this in New Orleans, you see this in South America and Brazil, many other places, all across America, all across the South where I'm from. They synchronize the saints with their gods and their orishas and their
Yeah.
loa, so that they can basically have a shrine in their home, and the powers that be, if they're snooping around or spying on them, they're like, oh no, we're Catholics now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally Catholic. Really Catholic.
Yeah,
So Catholic. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's layers to all this.
Yeah. So
Okay.
with
So
the three saints that you've mentioned there, what would be your best recommendation on pilgrimages for each of those three saints? Christopher, Clare, and Expedite.
All right, well, so Saint Expedite, his official, like, shrine place is in New Orleans.
Mhm.
And it's at this, when I went to New Orleans, I didn't time this either, but I was doing a Guadalupe novena, and it just so turned out that her feast day was the day I landed in New Orleans. So the first thing I did is I went down there and I went to the Church of Guadalupe, and that is where the original Saint Expedite like statue is. That's
Mhm.
that's basically his origin story. So, like, their origin stories are good for
Mhm.
that. Saint Clare, you know, um, I'm not too sure, because I haven't dug into, if like, if you get online, like, I would imagine there are, if there's not a specific origin story location for St. Clare that's like her official church, I know because I've seen them. There's loads of churches in England that
Yeah.
are dedicated to St. Clare.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
the Poor Clares, was the whole monastic order that came about from her,
Mhm.
just like Saint Francis and the Franciscans. Um, Guadalupe, well, that's L.A. That's why I'm trying to encourage you to go. But
Yeah.
you will find Guadalupe anywhere where there's Mexican or Latino culture in America, especially. But you know what? I was in, oh God, Cork. It's on the
Mhm.
border of Wales, and I went to a holy well there. It might still have been in Wales. It's when I was with Mark Ollie, and
Mhm.
he was kind of, we went on this kind of Grail quest trip all around northern Wales, and coming back in, we went to the city of it's Cork, right, Sef? And it's a very like Roman city.
Yeah, my Welsh geography is not as good as it should be. I know Oswestry and Ervig and Wrexham. So
This I think this is on just the English border though. He brought us there, and on the way there, I think we were still in Wales though.
the
We
Red
went,
Castle, Castle Koch.
no, well, regardless, we went to a holy well, and we went to it's a whole church sort of thing, and I need to look this up. I think it was Saint Bernadette's or Saint. It was one of the. There's a lot of holy wells in Wales, which is cool, which I like. But nonetheless, I'm in there, and all the traditional saints of the UK are kind of there. And there's like and it's gorgeous. I'll look it up, and if you want to kind of give like post notes for it, but like here's the place to go. But it always amazes me. There are candles burning, and you often see this in the groves or the places people come. They bring their own candles. They put them in these shrines. They put them in these sanctuaries. They put them in as holy as well. There is a Saint Expedite candle burning right there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And this is a very like New World saint.
Yeah,
Like
definitely caught on over here. Tell you that.
Yeah, but there he was. And I was kind of amazed by that. So you can go to that holy well and see a St. Expedite candle burning. But
And for St. Christopher, what would your recommendation be there?
I mean, really, I honor St. Christopher in train stations,
Okay.
tube stations, places of water, water crossings, bridges. I think technically maybe he was Turkish or something, but it's, I mean, go to the Vatican. You could go to the Vatican and see a statue of St. Christopher with a dog head. But once again, literally, like you can do this at your house. The great thing here is that lighting a candle, getting one of the prayer cards, simple thing, put out a white cloth, light a candle, light some incense. Frankincense is good. Have the card there, do the prayer, and just try to make that connection, and put out some water. Do that for 9 days. Do a novena, incense, water, candle, prayer, and then on the final day, give them their feast. And if you look it up, different ones seem to like different things, but they all like some wine. It's the blood of God. It's the Holy Sacrament. I take communion with them. I pour out some for them, some for me. Like, here we have a little communion together.
Because we did the one for Santa Sarah, and then we had that beautiful shaft of light come down on the feast day itself.
And I always go get local goods too, just like, especially if you're honoring a saint in a place that's associated with them, go to the local baker. They may have like various recipes that are literally like, this is like, I think in Glastonbury they have St. Dunstan's bread kind of stuff, or corn muffins or whatever. But, that sort of thing, you could do it. But that's what I recommend.
So if we pick apart a little bit, just so we've covered some of the like the very introductory stuff. If you say we'd gone to a point where we have a saint in mind, and somebody watching this wanted to build their own pilgrimage, what are the steps? So we know who the saint is, we know what they like, so we're looking for, if I've understood correctly, we're looking for their feast day, we're looking for like a 9-day period run up to that, to be in that area for a place which is special to them. What else would we be looking at?
Possibly devotions, acts of discipline that are related to them. Maybe during your feast day. So I have different places where I've had kind of shrines or whatnot, and sometimes that's my bedroom. And often part of what I do is like I don't, I'm celibate for those 9 days.
Yeah.
Can we say fuck?
I'm pretty sure we can say fuck. This is a motherfucking
part
soldier.
of it is like while I have the thing going, it's like I'm not gonna fuck in front of the saints.
Yeah.
Even though,
Yeah,
hey,
the Catholics.
like I don't think God's looking at me and being like, but like it's kind of like too, like you don't go into a church to like, unless you're trying to be edgy and
Yeah.
sacrilegious and try to like sneak into a church or whatever to make out or fornicate or whatever. Like if you're going into a house with reverence and you're approaching with reverence, yeah, you don't just kind of like be like, oh yeah, here's your candle and your incense and whatever, and now I'm gonna
Now watch this.
watch
Yeah.
porn here or whatever. Just keep it sacred. It's kind of well, this kind of delves back to the grimoires. There's always this kind of stage of like, if nothing else, it puts you in a different state. Like if you're normally drinking, smoking, and fornicating, and all these sort of things, and you stop, you're shifting your consciousness by simply being prudent and simply being, like refraining from things, and it shifts your consciousness, it shifts your
there's a
your sense of being.
presence to it where you're choosing to prioritize and you're choosing to focus on that. Yeah, like you say.
Yeah,
Okay,
precisely. And it's a demonstration, like I'm going to give some things up so that other things can come into my life, and then so I can be focused on what I'm petitioning, asking for, because then it shows you're serious. It shows you're willing to make a sacrifice,
Yeah.
and that I kind of recommend. But I would also recommend, like if you're going to do a pilgrimage, start a relationship first.
Yeah.
Just start doing what I talked about: the white cloth, candle, water, incense, image. You know, um, you go around all these places, especially the Catholic places, like in Saintes-Maries-de-la-Mer. They had all the shops where you can get all the little figurines or big ones if you want. Kind of look around, but you can find them anywhere. And there's actually a whole method to kind of waking up these, the figurines and such, that can involve olive oil. That's way more extensive. It would take a lot more time to kind of get into it, but there's good stuff online. But it's like anything, it's intent, and it's the act of like giving focus to it, and showing that you're genuine.
Yeah.
There's my little Babylon Camargue souvenir shrine item from going to see Sancerre. So
yeah.
It's probably supposed to go on a door, but it's gone on my altar for the last year and a bit. So
yeah, fair enough.
That's a spiritual doorway.
So does that make sense, Edward? Like, you know what I would recommend too? What city is there a particular city you grew up in?
No, army kid, so I grew up all over.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well then, see,
I was born in Liverpool, if that helps.
Okay. Yeah, I was visiting there recently when I was up there. Well, two things then. I'm sure every city in England and across Europe and such and other places generally has like an official saint of their town. So find out what that is for Liverpool. But then military saints could very well be receptive to you with that background, because that's something too, like telling your story to them. It's a two-way street. You acknowledge their story, and it's this way with grimoire spirits too. It's like, you're from here and you do these things, and this is what I'm keeping your story alive. But it's also like, okay, like for instance, Saint Expedite is a Roman centurion.
Cool.
That is a military saint. One saint that's very precious to me is Saint Martin. Another one who was a warrior who became a peacemaker. Loads of them. Saint George. I mean, that Saint George is the patron saint of England, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I think he's like
Turkish.
He's Syrian.
Yeah.
But whatever. The empire, right? It's take this and take that.
Yeah, I think St. George is probably the only saint I've consistently worked with throughout my magical career, because like having been devoted to Saint Michael for a little while, Can't tell that
Mhm.
right. Yeah, like every time I went to a cathedral or a minster, I would go to the Chapel of St. George. I even managed to find that in Girona when we were over in Spain in January, and there was this huge basilica in Girona, and went in and found the St. George and St. Michael little chapels on the side, and went and told them what I was up to, and that's always had a good result for me, and it's been brilliant that time as well. So I think that's definitely something you can do out of it is make sure to tell them your story.
Yeah.
Well, Edward too. Like, I'd highly recommend Saint Michael, because you're calling upon Saint Michael every time you do the LBRP, for instance.
Mhm.
You have a mentor here who's deeply connected to Saint Michael. You
Mm.
have I was just talking about this last night with someone, because we were talking about megalithic sites in the UK. There is what is called the Saint Michael line that runs top to bottom. There's the Saint Michael line and there's the Saint Mary line, and supposedly they cross in Glastonbury. But that is absolutely accessible to you. It's all these waypoints on the Saint Michael line where you live right now.
Yeah.
And Saint Michael's a strange one, because it's an angel, but it's also a saint, and that's not common amongst the angels per se. Usually it's like one thing or the other, but
Yeah.
Saint Michael is one of those that kind of has double duty.
Well, that leads me into a more esoteric question that I had, which is around your opinion around what you spoke about earlier of you're only dead when people stop remembering you and stop saying your name and so on, as well as your theory of St. Christopher being the next generation of Anubis.
Yeah, which is not, it's not my theory. It's
Yeah.
it's historical context of, like, why does he have you look at old pictures too of St. Christopher, and he has the head of a dog.
Yeah.
The
And
hominid thing,
is sainthood perhaps a stepping stone on the way to godhood? Is I suppose the question.
Like, as in, the goal is to become a living god.
Well, not to living
You're
God, I guess.
Raceland Magier, and you're like, I'm gonna become God and replace Tiamat. I mean, I don't know, like, to becoming a god. I don't know. That's never been one of my goals. But what do you mean by that? Sorry, I'm just getting a little
Well,
cheeky with it, but it's like,
curious. Yeah, no, I was just a bit curious about the idea that St. Christopher is this new understanding of the god Anubis, and you mentioned them being the mighty dead at the beginning. Is it perhaps, if we take the idea that we are more than just this body of flesh, and we have more than just this life on earth, if we take that as given and then sort of like start to explore that, is there a journey, a pilgrimage, if you will, in which one sort of ascends through various levels of being, and because they become a saint, because they get so much energy in continuing to interact with the physical world, is that, because there's plenty of cases where you can say, oh well, this ancient religion started with some hero, and then the story got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then suddenly they are a demigod or a full god or whatever. I mean, the Greek mythology is full of that.
yes.
Well, that's one of the you can always have epochal parallels where you have the demigods and heroes in the classical world, through to like saints in the more medieval times, and even superhero mythology now.
Yeah.
There's this idea, but you have lunar spirits. You have the idea of helping spirits that are moving up or moving down sideways. I think that's some of what you're kind of getting at. I think it's almost, there's two parts to it for me. Are saints another iteration of demigods and heroes, or other
Yeah.
immortals,
Oh,
but also is there a process to go from saint onwards in some
yeah.
way, shape, or form?
Yeah, because the understanding I have of saints is that these were historically genuine people. St. Francis, definitely born, definitely lived, definitely died, is now definitely a saint. You know, so he went from being human to saint. Now you can take the Jungian approach and say, oh well, it's just an archetype, it's just a way of understanding one's own mind, etc. Or you can take the more occult understanding and say, no, he's still there, he's doing his thing, he just doesn't have a body anymore. So he's become a saint. Is there room to go further? And is it a sort of a collection of elevators where people are going up and down?
Well, I would certainly say it's clearly a way to connect and experience the divine.
Mm.
You know, because that's what they did. That's what you're doing when you're practicing most forms of magic, but
Mm.
especially when you're approaching these beings through prayer and through what's considered often a very religious context, but is obviously certainly more than just solely dependent upon religion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I have to say that the coolest thing about all of it is like I feel like I have witnessed and experienced miraculous things
Yeah.
through that. Like showing up there. I mean, if I had been 2 minutes earlier, 2 minutes later
Yeah.
at that church in Munich, I would not have had that experience. Like, how did like literally that second I was like turning on my heels to walk out the door, organs, bells ringing, like people in robes march out from hidden doors. I mean, like that moment.
Yeah.
Uh,
And let's face it, like, as a cultist, we have a high tolerance for spooky shit going down.
yeah,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
when it's that marked, yeah.
But like, how does that happen? And how does so yes, certainly a way to access the divine, certainly a way to see all the various faces of the divine, but also
Yeah.
certainly a way to see how the divine is woven into us through the past, through the dead and the living, and our interactions with all that. Like I have like one little last bit too is
Mhm.
in Avebury, in Avebury, there is, so this is another one. This is the Holy Child of
Mm.
there's a few like Holy Children types, right? This one though is El Niño de Atocha, the child of basically it's a shape-shifting form of Jesus, but like as a child in an innocent form. The Child of Prague is another similar one, but this is also a saint that has been adopted by Vodun and other practices as a very sort of crossroad spirit. Also, one that kind of helps you, similar to Saint Christopher, um, open the ways, a way opener.
Mm.
And I have interacted with and engaged with this one for some time. I have a really amazing story that I intend to have published in my memoirs of when I first started interacting with this one. But for a good 14, I think it was probably 2000, maybe earlier, geez, it might have been 2008ish that I first started like putting out, engaging this one on Mondays, which is the day for it. uh and something that, Seth's aware of this, because like I gotta do my Monday thing, and I
Absolutely.
do it. Yeah, I do it wherever I am. It's kind of easy to do. It doesn't require much. I go to a crossroads and do it. And when I went to Avebury, I there was another thing where like this one Airbnb had disappeared the week I was trying to get it, and then I was like, well, what about the next week? And one just popped out of the blue. And except is it okay we kind of conclude with this one and kind of do a wrap up
Yeah.
of this story?
So,
Because I don't want us to get we can go on and on and on about it. I hope this conversation that we're having sparks a lot more conversations that we can have with each other and other people and stuff. But this is another thing. Just like being at that holy well on the borders of Wales and England and seeing St. Expedite, I check into my Airbnb. There's a whole other fun story about how basically like the head druid of Avebury ended up being my Airbnb host, which the only reason why like he revealed himself, because he was very much like this kind of like Dutch IT guy with like, you know, like an Iceland shirt on and like cargo shorts and, you know, very kind of like, you know,
Looks exactly how you'd expect. Yeah.
Yeah, like and you think like this guy's really great at coding and stuff, which he is. His name's Hank, and but he's wearing a Triskelion ring on, which I kind of noticed when I walk in, and and I have a tattoo that I got in Ireland of that, and he notices that too. So my second day there, and I basically extended it a day. The first night I went across to the stones there in Avebury, and it was misty, and we had a great day there too with Seth and Hannah and going to Longbarrow. That's a whole other story, but nonetheless, first night there, I'm doing this very like Jupiter and Taurus working of connecting with the stones, connecting with megalithic sites, connecting with spirits of the earth. I go out in there in the mist and I pour out some mead that I got in Glastonbury for the gnomes and do the prayer of the gnomes and say, show me the secrets of the stones. Next day, I'm having breakfast and I strike up that conversation as he's kind of, you know, it's like a B&B. He gives you a little breakfast and he's walking out the door. I'm like, hey, I noticed your ring. And he's like, oh, I noticed your tattoo. And I'm like, what's up with that? And he pauses. He goes, I'm the Archdruid of Avebury. He pulled out this big honking necklace he's wearing of it. And he's like, and I studied under the past Archdruid for 18 years. I'm like, holy shit. And long story short, he like, I don't think he does this with anyone. Well, first of all, I was like, what are you doing at noon? I'm like, dude, there's one pub in this town and one grocery, one little dinky convenience store. That's it. I'm not doing much but exploring the stones. Like, well, I'll take you around and show you basically show me all the secrets of the stones. But the point of the story is he opens up the portal into the rest of his house that guests aren't allowed in. And I don't think he ever does this. He showed me all this cool artwork. He showed me all this stuff. But then I'm looking and I see like a door, like a little patio area in the back. And there's a shrine to this guy.
There you go.
Like a big one. Well, it turns out his wife's Filipino. And the Holy Child is like that is probably the most venerated saint in the Philippines. Like if you know many Filipino people, like they're like, yeah, that is like standard household thing is you give fruit and the offerings and whatever to the Holy Child, to the El Nino. And I'm just like, I see you there. And like it's like he's smiling back at me. It's not even like it was like smiling back at me like,
there you go.
hey. So and I can't help but think like the fact I do go to other countries, and even though it might be weird or whatever, that I'm doing that I keep up that part of my promise. You know, I keep up that part of my relationship on Mondays. I do it. The rum, the penny, the coffee, the incense. I do it. I've been doing it a decade and a half, and it's like that was miraculous. With just like being in the right place in the right time once again, and the doors opening to allow for those relationships and those like my trip would have been very different had I not made that connection, if I had not booked it on those days and it kind of magically appeared. All sorts of other fun stuff happened. But that alone, like I mean, the little like you know, it is, and I would never have known. Never had known if he hadn't opened up the rest of his house to me, if that weird little connection hadn't happened. Yeah. So like that is what those are, you know, some of the examples I've talked about today. I love talking about because I don't know how you could sit there and be like, oh, that's just coincidence.
No.
Yeah.
And
Synchronicity.
Yeah, the synchronicity is off the charts, and I have seen that, and I have been with you while that happens. Like every time I speak to you, Chris, like, you know, if we leave it a couple of months, I'll be like, oh, what happened like this Monday? And it'll be another miraculous thing. So it really is, you know, a testament to your capacity to withstand the trials of the pilgrimages and really come out on top, because every time, man, something weird, wacky, and miraculous happens.
Yeah. And often challenging though too. There's trials and tribulations along the path, but you have to keep going, you know. And
Yeah.
and I'm going to leave that with this, and then that's my namesake. I mean, I'm named Christopher, means Christ bearer, and the story of Saint Christopher. He was a giant, and he would get people across the river. And one time, a child came, and the child was like, "Yeah, you're not going to be able to get me across." And he's like, "Well, ha, whatever." And he's carrying the child, and it's like the heaviest thing ever. And it's like carrying, you know, tons of weight, and he's pushing forward, and it basically, but as a child. That's why you always see him with like the holy, and in a lot of ways, it's like carrying the light, it's carrying the gnosis. But because of Saint Christopher's perseverance, getting to the other side, it was like a conversion that happened, and the becoming of the saint, you know, and in many ways connected to, and this is why Saint Christopher's a good kind of go to at first too. It's a psychopomp character. It's
Yeah.
it's one that you can go to then connect you with the others, you know, just like Mercury does that in the classical fashion. Animus, Hermenebus do that. You know, they're the door openers. Like that. Those are a lot of the ones that are, you know, part of my spirit clan team friend. You know, fantastic friends. It's the door openers, the way openers, because that
Yeah.
lines up a lot with what I do professionally as well. If that makes sense, and what I do for fun.
Yeah.
Well,
Brilliant.
I really appreciate you taking the time today, Chris, in sunny LA. It is gone midnight here, so thank you for staying up past your bedtime, Edward. And asking some really fantastic questions. Exactly what we hoped for. The idea of the series is, like you say, to get an expert and someone who's starting out in that area together, and I think we've done a pretty good job here. And I'm really pleased that we're all going to be in the same room in less than 2 weeks' time at
Yeah.
the 2024 International Thelemic Symposium in Oxford. So if anybody's watching that, if we get this up in time, there's still a few tickets left at visible-college.org. In the meantime, Mr. Christopher, what's your website?
It's a bit of a work in progress, but it gives you a good idea of who I am and what I do. It's lalanomicon.com. I can also be found on Instagram at Mr. XOFER, MISTER XOFER. And there you can see shows I've been working on, and I usually post some fun music video stories of the adventures I'm having.
Fantastic. And Edward, any final thoughts about what we talked today and what you got out of this?
I'm going to go find some saints and start working with them. And I think that the point I really loved the most was find some saints who fit with your story and
Yes.
work with them.
Yeah.
I'm going to explore that a bit more.
Precisely.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well, again, from the Visible College and from me, Sef Salem, thank you both very much. And if you're watching at home, hopefully we'll see you next time for our next adventure. Take it easy. Bye.
Bye.